Silent Guests. Chapter 11. The Fourth Person. Neil Fraser stared at the telephone as though it had betrayed him. For several seconds after Oliver replaced the receiver, nobody moved. Beyond the tall windows of Ravensmere House, seawater continued its slow advance across the causeway. The last broken sections of stone disappeared beneath the incoming tide, until the road to the mainland became nothing more than a darker shape beneath restless gray water. Neil shook his head. No. Oliver turned towards him. You said you spoke to the mainland station this morning? I did. What number did you call? The same number Arthur kept beside the telephone. Neil crossed the entrance hall and opened a narrow drawer beneath the table. He removed a small address book, flicked through several pages, and handed it to Oliver. There. Oliver read the number. Did you dial it yourself? Yes. From this telephone? Yes. And who answered? A man. Name? Neil hesitated. I don't remember. You spoke to the police and didn't ask who you were speaking to? I thought I was speaking to the duty officer. What exactly did he say? Neil rubbed both hands over his face. He said the eastern road had been blocked by a landslip. He said emergency vehicles couldn't reach the causeway and that they were arranging another way across. Lucy watched him carefully. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I? Nobody answered. That was precisely the problem. Why wouldn't he? The call had given Neil exactly the information necessary to make the delay believable. There had been bad weather. The roads on the mainland were invisible from the island. The telephone connection was unreliable. Nobody at Ravensmere House had any reason to question a police officer explaining why assistance had been delayed. Oliver looked towards the address book again. Where did Arthur get this number? I don't know. How long has it been written there? Years, probably. Oliver frowned. Lucy saw the thought forming. What? He showed her the page. The number had been written in black ink. Everything around it was blue. Lucy leaned closer. That was added later. Looks like it. Neil took the book back. I've never noticed. Who uses this address book? Arthur did, sometimes me. Anyone else? Anyone could have. Marcus gave a tired laugh from the drawing room doorway. There it is again. Oliver ignored him. Lucy looked towards the telephone. Could the call have been redirected? Henry frowned. How? I don't know. You're asking a journalist, not an engineer. Andrew spoke from beside the laptop. Old telephone systems can be manipulated. Everyone looked towards him. He immediately lifted both hands. That is not an admission. Despite everything, Lucy nearly smiled. Andrew continued. I mean, there are ways of diverting calls. I don't know whether this line can do it. Oliver looked towards Neil. Where does the telephone line enter the house? Neil thought. Cellar. Show me. Marcus stepped forward. We're all coming. Oliver looked ready to object. Marcus shook his head. No, we are done with splitting into little groups while people disappear. For once, Oliver did not argue. The cellar beneath Ravensmere House was considerably larger than Lucy expected. A narrow stone staircase descended from the service corridor into a network of low rooms beneath the oldest part of the mansion. Neil led them past wine racks, storage cupboards, and an enormous boiler that hummed beneath exposed pipes. The air smelled of damp stone, metal, and old timber. Lucy remained conscious of everyone around her. Oliver ahead, Neil leading, Andrew beside the wall, Marcus immediately behind him, Helen and Evelyn together, Henry bringing up the rear, 8 people, Arthur dead, Elliot dead, 8 remaining, 1 murderer if they were right. Perhaps more than one. Lucy disliked that thought and pushed it aside. Neil stopped beside a wooden panel mounted high on the cellar wall. This is the telephone junction. Oliver examined it. The box looked old, though several newer wires had been connected over the years. Has anyone worked on this recently? Not that I know of. Andrew leaned closer. There's a second cable. Oliver looked towards him. Meaning? I don't know. You sounded confident a second ago. I said there was a cable, Not that I knew where it went. Neil frowned. That shouldn't be there. Everyone became quiet. Oliver pointed. What is it? Neil moved closer. A thin black wire ran from the bottom of the junction box and disappeared behind a pipe. I've never seen that before. Marcus folded his arms. Could have been there for 20 years. No. Neil shook his head. I had the boiler repaired last winter. That wall was exposed. So it was added since then? Possibly. Oliver followed the wire. It traveled along the cellar wall, held in place by small clips, then disappeared through a drilled hole into the adjoining room. They followed. The next room had once been used for coal storage. Nothing remained except shelving, old tools, and several pieces of discarded furniture. The cable continued, then ended. Lucy frowned. That's it? Oliver crouched. The final section of wire had been cut. Cleanly, recently. He touched nothing. Someone removed whatever was connected here. Andrew looked towards the empty shelf. A telephone? Could be. A recording device? Could be. Marcus exhaled. Useful. Oliver ignored him. Lucy examined the dust. A rectangular clean patch marked the shelf. Something had rested there until very recently. How recently? Oliver looked at the surrounding dust. Impossible to say exactly. Neil crouched beside him. That shelf hasn't been used in years. Lucy looked towards the cut cable. Then someone installed equipment down here. Yes. And removed it. Yes. Before or after Arthur died. Oliver stood. That is now one of several questions I'd quite like answered. Henry had remained near the doorway. Who knew about this cellar? Neil answered. Everyone who works here. Which means Arthur, me, the caretaker, cleaners when the house is occupied. Marcus looked towards Andrew. And anyone with the plans? Andrew's frustration returned. Yes, Marcus, I knew the house possessed a cellar. Remarkably, that has not yet made me a murderer. Didn't say it did. You keep almost saying it. Lucy looked towards Oliver before another argument began. Could this explain Neil's call? Potentially. If the number was changed and someone had a telephone connected here, they could answer Neil's call from inside the house. Silence. The implications settled slowly. Neil stared towards the cut wire. You mean I never called the mainland? Maybe not. The man I spoke to was here? Possibly. Neil looked physically sick. Lucy understood. He had stood upstairs believing he was asking the police for help, while someone perhaps only 20 feet beneath him pretended to be an officer. Marcus looked around. Wouldn't Neil recognize one of our voices? Oliver nodded. Probably. Then outsider. Not necessarily. Helen spoke before Oliver could continue. Voices can be disguised? Marcus looked towards her. You seem remarkably knowledgeable about that. I spent 37 years listening to defendants attempt it. Lucy looked back towards the empty shelf. There may be another explanation. Oliver waited. The equipment could have redirected the call somewhere else. Andrew nodded. That makes more sense. To where? No idea. Could it have been automatic? Potentially. Lucy frowned. So the person who set this up wouldn't necessarily need to be standing in the cellar when Neil called. No. That mattered. It meant the false call could have been prepared in advance, before Arthur died, perhaps before any of them arrived. The murder was beginning to look less like an act committed in desperation and more like something anticipated. Oliver seemed to reach the same conclusion. This was planned. Nobody spoke. He pointed towards the altered telephone line. Someone expected us to try calling for help. Henry looked towards him. Before Arthur was killed? Unless they installed this overnight. Neil shook his head. They couldn't. Why? The cellar door was locked. Who has keys? Arthur and me. Marcus gave him a pointed look. Neil's expression hardened. And the spare set in the kitchen office? Accessible. Yes. So they could. Neil looked away. Oliver examined the floor. No useful footprints, no dropped tools. Nothing except the missing device and severed cable. Whoever had removed it had done so carefully. Lucy looked towards the shelves. Why remove the equipment? To hide how the call was intercepted. After Neil used it? Probably. Then whoever removed it knew we'd eventually check. Oliver nodded. Or expected the real police to. That thought silenced them. The murderer had not simply planned a killing, they had planned the aftermath. They returned upstairs shortly after 5. The weather had deteriorated again. Rain struck the windows in irregular bursts, and the causeway had vanished completely beneath the tide. Oliver insisted they remain together in the drawing room. This time nobody complained. Neil brought food from the kitchen, but very little was eaten. The lunch that should have happened hours earlier became plates of sandwiches and soup consumed without appetite. Elliot's absence had become physical. His usual place near the window remained empty. His camera was gone. His body still lay near the chapel because Oliver refused to move it until the police arrived. Lucy found herself looking towards the window repeatedly. Somewhere beyond the rain, Elliot remained alone. She hated that. Andrew reopened Elliot's files. 14 photographs. M03, M07, M14. Martin Vale appeared in all 3. Yet Lucy now found herself more interested in the other images. The 4th person. The figure who seemed to exist only at the edges. She opened M05. The book. The cornflower. M09. Again. M12. Again. Oliver sat beside her. Anything? Not yet. That sounded optimistic. It wasn't. Lucy enlarged M12. Amelia stood outside the cafe. Behind the glass, the 4th person sat with the book on the table. Why the flower? Oliver looked at the screen. Arthur used it as a marker. I know, but why did the person actually have one? He frowned. What do you mean? We assumed Arthur marked the images because the flower identified the same person. Yes, but where did the flower come from? Oliver looked again. A tiny blue shape protruded between the pages. Amelia. Maybe, Lucy thought back. Amelia pressed flowers into books. Arthur had kept them. Neil knew her favorite. The killer later scattered similar petals through the corridor. What if the 4th person wasn't carrying their own book? Oliver's eyes sharpened. Amelia's. Yes. The possibility changed the image. The figure behind the cafe window might not simply have been following Amelia. They might have been someone Amelia trusted enough to lend a book. Can we identify the book? Andrew leaned over. From that? Try. He enlarged the image. Pixels softened. The cover was dark green. No readable title. Evelyn moved closer. I know that book. Everyone looked towards her. Lucy felt another surge of expectation. You're sure? No. Evelyn immediately corrected herself. It looks familiar. From where? The exhibition. Lucy remembered Amelia carrying Rebecca. Same one? No. Evelyn frowned. She had several books in her bag. Several? Yes. Why? She told me she was returning them. To a library? I assumed so. Neil looked towards the image. Amelia didn't use libraries much. Marcus frowned. Everyone uses libraries. She bought books. Neil gave a faint smile. Far too many of them. Arthur used to complain there wasn't a shelf in the house she hadn't invaded. Lucy stared at the green book. Then who was she returning them to? Nobody knew. Andrew began searching through Arthur's archive index. Books, lending, green cover. Marcus stared at him. You think Arthur cataloged books by color? I think Arthur cataloged everything. That was difficult to dispute. Andrew continued scrolling, then stopped. There's an entry. What? He read aloud. Pembroke Amelia. Reading group. St. Matthew's. Helen looked up. St. Matthew's? You know it? A community center in Edinburgh. Henry nodded. Marrow funded it. There it was again. Marrow. The foundation seemed to sit beneath every path Amelia had followed. Andrew searched further. Arthur has a box. Where? Archive room. Oliver stood. We go together. Marcus groaned quietly. 8 people marching through the house every time someone needs a piece of paper. Oliver looked towards him. 7 if you'd prefer staying here alone. Marcus stood immediately. 8 sounds lovely. The box labeled St. Matthew's/reading group/2015-16 contained surprisingly little. A leaflet, several photographs, a membership list, copies of emails. Lucy lifted the leaflet carefully. The reading group had been part of a Marrow Foundation outreach program for adults recovering from addiction, homelessness, and long-term unemployment. Henry looked uncomfortable. I remember this program. Were you involved? Only in approving funding. Oliver looked towards him. Anyone else here? Henry scanned the membership list. No. Neil looked over his shoulder. Amelia isn't listed. She may have volunteered, Andrew said. Lucy found a photograph. 12 people sat around a table inside a community hall. Books, coffee, biscuits. Amelia stood near the back, smiling, alive. Lucy felt an unexpected sadness. Most photographs they had seen of Amelia recently existed because someone had been watching her, investigating her, or preserving evidence around her death. This was different. She looked happy. Then Lucy noticed the person beside her, a woman, perhaps 40, dark hair, no glasses. Lucy had never seen her before. The woman held a green book. A blue cornflower protruded between its pages. Oliver. He looked. Andrew immediately opened M12 on the laptop. The clothes differed. The angle differed. The cafe reflection obscured most of the figure. But the hands matched, long fingers. A distinctive bend in the little finger. Evelyn leaned closer. That's her. The 4th person? I think so. Lucy looked toward the membership sheet. Who is she? Andrew checked the names against the photograph. Arthur had written numbers lightly beneath each person. The woman was number 7. Andrew found number 7 on the accompanying sheet, then stopped. What? He turned the page towards Lucy. The entry read, Sarah Mercer, Program Coordinator. Marcus frowned. Never heard of her. Henry had gone very still. Lucy noticed. Henry! He looked towards her. You know the name. Yes. Who was she? Henry removed his glasses. I never met her. That wasn't the question. She worked for Marrow. As a program coordinator? Yes. What happened to her? Henry hesitated. I thought she left. When? 2016. Before or after Amelia died? Henry looked toward the photograph. After. Lucy felt the now familiar chill. How long after? Several weeks. Where did she go? I don't know. Oliver took the membership sheet. Is she still alive? I have no idea. Andrew searched through the remaining papers. Arthur tried to find out. He lifted several printed emails. He contacted Marrow 6 years ago. They said they had no forwarding address. Another email. Electoral register search. Nothing. Another. Company's house. Nothing. Lucy looked at Sarah Mercer's smiling face. Martin Vale disappeared 2 days after Amelia died. Sarah Mercer vanished from the records several weeks later. What was Amelia doing at the reading group? Lucy asked. Neil stared at the photograph. She never mentioned it. Journalism? Possibly. Andrew found a handwritten note. Arthur wondered the same thing. He read it. Amelia began attending St. Matthew's in November 2015. No published article located. Purpose unknown. Lucy examined the picture. Amelia and Sarah appeared comfortable together. Not journalist and reluctant source. Friends, perhaps. Then Evelyn spoke. The hands. Lucy looked towards her. What about them? Evelyn pointed towards Sarah's right hand. Look at the ring. Lucy's stomach tightened. A ring sat on Sarah Mercer's finger. Large, distinctive. For half a second, Lucy thought of Helen. But it was not the same ring, different design, different finger. Still, something about it bothered her. Evelyn frowned. I've drawn that shape before. Where? I don't know. She closed her eyes. Give me a minute. Oliver looked towards Lucy. Sarah may be our fourth person. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. Because Amelia told Neil the fourth person was someone nobody would notice because they never appeared to be part of anything. Lucy pointed towards the photograph. Sarah worked for Marrow. That makes her part of something. Oliver considered it. Unless Amelia meant she appeared peripheral. Maybe. Lucy disliked the uncertainty. Something remained wrong. Arthur had spent 10 years investigating this. Surely if Sarah Mercer were simply the fourth person, he would have written it down. Unless he never proved it, or unless Sarah was another false trail. Andrew continued searching the box, then found an envelope. It had already been opened. Inside was a photograph, not a printout, an original. Lucy recognized the location immediately. The Calder Hotel, night service entrance. Edward Bell stood beside a car. Martin Vale faced him. M03, the same photograph Elliot had restored, but this was the damaged original. The center of the image had been scratched almost white. Lucy stared. This is what Elliot repaired. Oliver nodded. Looks like it. She tilted the photograph. The scratch marks covered Vale's face, but something else remained visible at the edge. A third person. Almost entirely cropped from Elliot's restored version. Only half a body, a woman's coat, one hand, a handbag. Oliver frowned. Elliot's image didn't show her. No. Why? Andrew opened M03 again. The digital scan ended several centimeters earlier. Lucy felt excitement and dread arrive together. Arthur cropped the scan, or whoever sent it to Elliot did. The original contained more information than the restored file. Oliver leaned closer. The woman's face remained outside the frame, but her hand was visible. Evelyn stared at it. Then her expression changed. The ring. Lucy looked. A large ring. Distinctive shape. The same one Sarah Mercer wore in the St. Matthew's photograph. Nobody spoke. Sarah had been there, at the Calder Hotel, with Edward Bell, with Martin Vale, months before Amelia's death. The supposedly peripheral program coordinator was directly connected to two men at the center of the investigation. Marcus stared at the photograph. So that's it? Lucy looked towards him. What? Your fourth person. Helen shook her head. Not necessarily. Marcus laughed. She appears in the photograph with Bell and Vale. Partially. She worked for Marrow. Yes. She knew Amelia. Yes. And then she disappeared. Helen remained calm. All of which makes her important. None of which tells us what she did. Marcus looked frustrated. Does anyone in this house ever allow a clue to actually mean something? Lucy almost agreed with him. Then she noticed writing on the back of the photograph. Faded pencil. She turned it carefully. Arthur's handwriting. Not SM. Beneath it. Ask why she was there. Marcus stared. You have got to be kidding me. Lucy read the words again. Not Sarah Mercer. Arthur had already considered her. Already rejected her as the fourth person. Then who? Nobody answered. Lucy looked again at the photograph. Sarah's body at the edge. Vale, Bell, the car. Perhaps Arthur's note did not mean Sarah was unimportant, only that they were asking the wrong question. Not who was she? Why was she there? Lucy studied the scene. Bell appeared to be passing Vale an envelope. Sarah stood several feet away, watching, not participating. Her handbag hung open. One hand rested inside. Lucy leaned closer. She's holding something. Oliver looked. What? Inside the bag. Only the edge was visible, a rectangular object. Andrew squinted. Another book? No. Evelyn moved closer. A camera. Lucy stared at her. You're sure? I think so. Sarah Mercer had not been meeting Bell and Vale. She had been photographing them. Lucy felt the truth shift again. She was helping Amelia. Oliver looked towards her. Possibly. That's why Amelia trusted her. And why Sarah disappeared afterwards. Marcus frowned. Then where are Sarah's photographs? Nobody answered. Lucy looked at Arthur's note. Ask why she was there. Arthur had discovered that Sarah was not part of the conspiracy. She was investigating it. Perhaps alongside Amelia. Perhaps before her. Henry sat down heavily. I remember her now. Everyone turned. Lucy stared at him. You said you'd never met her. I hadn't. That sentence isn't becoming more convincing. No. Henry shook his head. I mean, I remember the name from something else. What? Robert. Kay? Yes. Henry's face had become pale. A few months before Amelia died, Robert asked me whether I knew anyone at St. Matthew's. Why? He said someone was leaking confidential information from Marrow. Lucy felt her heartbeat quicken. Sarah, I don't know. What did you tell him? That I wasn't involved in staffing. Did he mention her name? Henry thought. No. Did you ask why? No. Lucy closed her eyes. Another small decision. Another moment where somebody had failed to ask the next question. Henry seemed to understand her reaction. I know. She opened her eyes. Do you? Yes. His voice sharpened. You think I haven't replayed every conversation I've had with Kay since yesterday? Lucy said nothing. Henry looked towards Amelia's photograph. I admired him. That is the part you don't understand. Robert wasn't some sinister man lurking in corridors. He was funny, generous. He helped junior officers. He raised money for charities. He remembered the names of my children. Henry swallowed. If Arthur was right, then I spent 20 years calling a corrupt man my friend. Lucy softened despite herself. That was Arthur's theme again. Complexity. People were rarely warned that evil would arrive looking like evil. Sometimes it remembered your children's names. They carried the entire St. Matthew's box back to the drawing room. By then, the light outside had begun to fade. Neil checked the causeway. Still submerged. The real police had said they would attempt to reach the island as soon as conditions allowed, but after the false call, nobody trusted promises delivered through the telephone. Oliver returned to the problem of the missing camera. If Sarah was photographing Bell and Vale, Elliot may have restored more of her images. Andrew searched the drive. Nothing labeled Sarah. Search Mercer. Nothing. St. Matthew's. Nothing, Lucy thought. Search the date of M03. Andrew checked the file metadata. February 19th, 2016. He searched. Several files appeared. Not photographs. Documents. One was a text file. Andrew opened it. Elliot had written, Client requested restoration of subject only. Full scan unavailable. Cropping appears intentional. Original likely contains additional image area. Lucy stared. Elliot knew. Oliver leaned closer. He knew the scan had been cropped. But Arthur sent it. Maybe Arthur didn't. Lucy looked towards him. What? Oliver pointed towards the client reference. The restoration order had been placed under A. Pembroke. Everyone had assumed Arthur, but the order itself contained no first name. Lucy felt unease return. Amelia? Andrew shook his head. She was dead. Then someone using her initial. Marcus frowned. Arthur. Probably. Lucy stared at the words. Full scan unavailable. Then why was the original sitting in Arthur's archive? Perhaps Arthur had not possessed it 8 months ago. Perhaps someone had given it to him more recently. Or perhaps the restoration request had not come from Arthur at all. Can you see where the order was sent from? Andrew checked. Email address. Name? No. Generic encrypted mail service. Oliver's expression hardened. Elliot never verified his client. He didn't need to, Andrew said. It was commercial work. Lucy thought of Elliot receiving an invitation months later from Arthur Pembroke, recognizing the surname. coming anyway. Perhaps his presence at Ravensmere had not begun with Arthur's invitation. Perhaps someone had deliberately brought him into the investigation long before that. She looked towards Elliot's empty chair. What if Elliot was selected? Oliver turned. For the restoration? Yes. Why him? I don't know, Evelyn answered quietly. Because of his brother. Everyone looked towards her. She seemed uncomfortable with the attention. Elliot told us he never identifies people unless he is certain because his brother was wrongly identified. Lucy remembered. Pixels aren't truth just because somebody wants them to be. What if Arthur knew that? Oliver frowned. Then he chose Elliot because Elliot wouldn't give him the answer he wanted. Exactly. Arthur had not gathered people who would confirm his beliefs. He had gathered people capable of challenging them. Lucy felt a sudden sadness. The more she understood Arthur's plan, the more tragic its destruction became. He wanted this done properly. Oliver nodded, which suggests he expected police scrutiny eventually. He was building a case. Yes. And someone killed him before he could present it. The room fell silent. Then the telephone rang. Nobody moved. After what they had learned in the cellar, the sound had become threatening. 1 ring, 2, 3. Oliver crossed the hall. He looked towards everyone before lifting the receiver. Ravensmere House. Lucy watched him. Yes. A pause. When? Another. Understood. He replaced the receiver. Marcus spoke immediately. Real police? Oliver nodded. They're sending a boat. Relief moved through the room. When? Within the hour. Neil looked toward the windows. In this weather? Coast Guard assistance. Marcus exhaled. Thank Christ. Nobody celebrated. Perhaps they had learned better. Oliver remained beside the telephone. Something about his expression bothered Lucy. What else? He looked towards her. They asked us to secure the bodies and touch nothing else. That makes sense. Yes. He hesitated. They also asked whether anyone named Sarah Mercer was in the house. The room became silent. Lucy felt a chill. How do they know that name? I asked. And? Oliver looked toward the telephone. They received an email approximately 40 minutes ago. From who? Unknown sender. What did it say? Oliver's eyes moved across the room. 4 words. Nobody breathed. Lucy waited. Oliver spoke. Sarah Mercer is alive. Marcus stared at him. That's impossible. Why? She vanished 10 years ago. That does not mean she died. Lucy looked towards Sarah's photograph on the table. The woman beside Amelia, the green book, the cornflower, the camera hidden inside her bag. A person Arthur had spent years trying to find. A person who might know what Amelia discovered. Did the email say where she is? No. Anything else? No. Lucy stared at the photograph. Then Andrew made a sound behind her. Not fear. Confusion. She turned. He was looking at Elliot's hard drive. What? One of the folders changed. Oliver crossed towards him. What do you mean? I haven't touched anything. Andrew pointed toward the screen. A new folder sat inside the directory. Lucy was certain it had not been there before. SMI. Marcus stepped closer. How can a folder just appear? Andrew looked genuinely frightened. It can't. Clearly it can. Not unless the drive is synchronizing with something. Oliver stared. Internet? There isn't any. Network? Andrew looked towards the ceiling. Maybe. Lucy remembered the altered telephone system. Ravensmere House was old. That did not mean its infrastructure was simple. Open it. Andrew hesitated. Oliver nodded. Do it. The folder contained one file, a photograph. Andrew opened it. Lucy felt the room disappear around her. The image had been taken inside Ravensmere House. Recently, very recently. Arthur stood in the drawing room beside the fireplace. Alive. The date stamp was yesterday. He was speaking to someone outside the frame. On the table beside him lay the leather folder. Lucy stared at the photograph. "Who took this?" Nobody answered. Andrew enlarged the image. A mirror above the fireplace reflected part of the room behind the photographer. A shoulder, dark clothing, a hand holding the camera, and beyond them, standing near the drawing room door, another person. Elliot. Lucy felt her heartbeat accelerate. He was here. Oliver leaned closer. "When was this taken?" Andrew checked the metadata. 3:28 yesterday afternoon. Lucy stared. Arthur had been found dead less than an hour later. Elliot told us he wasn't with Arthur. Oliver nodded. He lied. Marcus looked almost angry. Again. But Lucy barely heard him. Something else in the reflection had caught her attention. Elliot was not looking at Arthur. He was looking at the photographer, and his expression was not suspicious. It was shocked. Lucy pointed on zoom. Andrew enlarged Elliot's reflection. The quality degraded. Still, the emotion remained unmistakable. Recognition. Lucy felt the hairs rise along her arms. Elliot knew whoever took this. Oliver nodded slowly. Then Andrew whispered, "There's another reflection." Nobody spoke. He enlarged the far edge of the mirror. A second figure stood in the corridor behind Elliot, mostly hidden, only half a face. Lucy leaned closer. The image broke into pixels. Not enough. Then Evelyn gasped. "What?" She pointed towards the reflected figure. "The glasses." Lucy stared. Dark hair, narrow glasses, a long face. Older than in the courthouse photograph, but recognizable. Henry stood so quickly his chair struck the floor behind him. "No." Lucy turned towards him. His face had emptied of color. The man in the mirror had disappeared 10 years ago. Yet yesterday afternoon, less than an hour before Arthur Pembroke was murdered, someone who looked remarkably like Dr. Martin Vale had been standing inside Ravensmere House. For several seconds, nobody in the drawing room seemed capable of accepting what they were looking at. The reflected face remained little more than a damaged arrangement of pixels on Andrew's screen, yet the resemblance was strong enough to disturb everyone who had seen the courthouse photograph. Dark hair, thinner now, narrow glasses, the same long face, the same slightly stooped posture. 10 years had passed, but the man in the mirror looked close enough to Martin Vale that Henry Shaw had gone completely still. Lucy turned towards him. "You're sure?" Henry did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the screen. "I'm sure enough to be frightened." Oliver stepped closer to the laptop. "That is not the same as identification." "No." Henry removed his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief, despite there being nothing on the lenses. "But if that isn't Martin Vale, then it is someone who resembles him very closely." Marcus looked towards the door. "So let me understand this. A man disappears 2 days after Amelia dies, vanishes for 10 years, then turns up in Arthur's drawing room less than an hour before Arthur is murdered." Helen's expression hardened. "If it is him..." Marcus gave a humorless laugh. "You do enjoy that phrase." "Because it remains important." Oliver nodded. "She's right." Marcus looked towards him. "Of course she is." Lucy barely heard the exchange. Her attention had returned to Elliot's reflection. He had known whoever took the photograph, not necessarily known them well, but recognized them. His face held no fear. It held surprise. That suggested something else. Elliot wasn't shocked by Vale. Oliver looked towards her. "What makes you say that?" "He's not looking at the corridor." Lucy pointed towards the mirror. "He's looking at the person holding the camera." Andrew enlarged the image as far as he could without losing everything. The photographer's hand remained visible. Nothing else useful. "No ring," Lucy murmured. "No obvious watch," Oliver said. "Could be anyone." Henry looked towards Elliot's reflection again. Then why would Elliot recognize the photographer? Lucy thought of the restoration orders. The hidden client, the missing camera, the laptop, the second drive. Maybe the person who commissioned the restorations? Oliver's eyes sharpened. That would explain it. And if Elliot finally realized the same person had been feeding him images, he might have recognized them here. Marcus stared. So the photographer in this picture could be the person who brought Elliot into all of this before Arthur ever invited him. Lucy nodded slowly. And perhaps the person who killed him. The room fell silent. Outside, rain moved across the windows in heavy gusts. The possibility felt too large to say aloud, yet nobody needed to. Someone had been shaping the investigation long before they arrived at Ravensmere House. Not just reacting to Arthur, preparing. Oliver looked towards Andrew. Can you see where the image came from? Andrew checked the file details. Local directory. Meaning? It looks like it was copied onto Elliot's drive from another device connected to the house network. Can you tell which device? Not from this. Could the source still be connected? Andrew hesitated. Maybe. Marcus folded his arms. Comforting. Andrew ignored him and opened the system tools. A list of devices appeared. Most were meaningless combinations of letters and numbers. One entry, however, stood out. Ravensmere_archive. Oliver looked towards Neil. What is that? Neil frowned. Arthur's desktop computer. In the study? Yes. Andrew checked the status. It's online. The room became still again. Arthur's study had been locked since his death. Oliver had the only key. At least, Marcus said quietly. That's one room we know nobody has been in. Lucy looked towards Oliver. He did not return the look, because both of them knew that statement was not necessarily true. Someone had stood outside the study at 6:17. Someone had known the service passages. Someone had altered the telephone system. Someone had already moved evidence around the house. A locked door no longer felt like much protection. Oliver stood. We check it. Nobody objected. They moved through the entrance hall together, climbed the staircase, and stopped outside Arthur's study. Oliver took the key from his pocket. The brass lock turned. The door opened. The room looked exactly as Lucy remembered. Arthur's desk, his chair, the leather blotter, papers left in careful disorder. Rain-darkened windows, nothing visibly changed. Andrew went directly to the computer. The screen was black. He pressed the power button. Nothing. Unplugged? Neil looked behind the desk. No. Andrew checked the tower. Power is on. Then why is it dark? He pressed another button. The screen came alive. A login prompt appeared. Arthur's initials already filled the username field. Andrew looked towards Neil. Password? Neil shook his head. No idea. Lucy glanced around the desk. Arthur had been meticulous, but not careless. She doubted he wrote passwords on sticky notes. Then she remembered Elliot's drive. Millie, the nickname. Try Amelia. Rejected. Millie. Rejected. Andrew shook his head. Don't burn attempts. Oliver nodded. Stop. Lucy stared at the monitor. If the machine was connected to Elliot's drive, someone had accessed it. Perhaps remotely, perhaps earlier. Can you check connection history without logging in? Andrew thought. Maybe through the router. Where? Neil answered. Office beside the library. They left Arthur's study locked again and headed downstairs. The office was small and functional compared with the rest of Ravensmere House. A printer occupied one corner, alongside filing cabinets and shelves of household accounts. A wireless router sat beneath the desk. Andrew logged into its interface using the default credentials printed beneath the unit. Marcus stared. That's reassuring. Andrew shrugged. It's a private house. With a murderer. No one anticipated that when the broadband was installed. The device list appeared. Arthur's desktop, Andrew's laptop, several phones, Elliot's drive, then one unidentified device. No name, no manufacturer. Connected yesterday afternoon, disconnected 40 minutes ago. Lucy felt a slow chill. When was the photograph added? Andrew checked. Roughly 40 minutes ago. Oliver leaned closer. So that device pushed the image. Looks like it. Can we locate it? Not exactly. Inside the house? Almost certainly. Marcus looked towards the ceiling. So the mysterious fourth person might not just be alive? They might currently be in Ravensmere. Helen folded her arms. Or one of us is using another device. That answer returned the suspicion immediately to the room. Lucy looked around. 8 people. Every one of them now frightened. Every one of them carrying some piece of Amelia's history. One of them perhaps carrying much more. Oliver checked the network list again. Is it still disconnected? Yes. Then we search. Marcus sighed. All of us. All of us. Oliver's tone left no room for argument. Bedrooms first, then common rooms. Nobody separates. The search began slowly. Phones, tablets, chargers, laptop bags. Henry had a phone and tablet. Marcus had 2 phones, neither with signal. Helen carried only an old mobile. Andrew's laptop remained downstairs. Evelyn had a phone and sketching tablet. Neil had no computer at all. Lucy had her phone. Oliver had his. Nothing matched the unidentified device. They reached Elliot's room last. The absence hit Lucy differently now. His clothes remained where he had left them. A mug sat beside the bed. A book lay open face down on the windowsill. The room retained the interrupted quality of someone expected to return within minutes. Oliver searched carefully. No camera, no laptop, no second hard drive. Then Lucy noticed the wardrobe. The bottom panel sat slightly uneven. Oliver. He crouched. The panel lifted. Beneath it lay a small black case. Everyone went quiet. Oliver opened it. Inside was the second hard drive. Marcus exhaled. Finally. Andrew connected it to the laptop. Password prompt. Lucy tried the same thought. Millie. Rejected. Evelyn looked towards the open book on the windowsill. What was Elliot reading? Lucy picked it up carefully by the edges. A photography monograph. Inside the cover, Elliot had written a sentence. Never trust the first frame. Andrew looked up. Could be the password. He typed it without spaces. Rejected. With spaces. Rejected. Oliver looked toward the book. What does it mean? Lucy stared at the phrase. First frame, second frame. Elliot had restored images by comparing versions. Maybe the first frame was never the answer. She looked towards Andrew. Try second frame. Access granted. Marcus stared. I take back almost everything I've ever said about photographers. The drive opened. It was far more organized than the first. Folders by client. Dates. Restoration projects. One folder named AP_final. Lucy felt her pulse rise. Andrew opened it. Hundreds of images, scans, enhanced crops, photographs of Arthur's evidence. Then a document. Read if something happens. Nobody moved. Oliver nodded. Open it. The file contained a short note from Elliot. Not a confession. Not a dramatic message. Just careful, precise language. If you are reading this, I was correct to keep a second copy. The client using A. Pembroke was not Arthur Pembroke. I confirmed this after arriving at Ravensmere. Arthur had no knowledge of 3 restoration requests made under his name. Whoever commissioned them had access to photographs connected to Amelia Pembroke before Arthur did. I believe that person intended to control what Arthur saw. Lucy felt the room tighten. Andrew continued. The cropped scans are not accidental. Important people were removed from multiple images before I received them. I restored what I could from damage, but not from missing image area. After seeing the originals in Arthur's archive, I realized several files had been deliberately reframed. Oliver leaned closer. Keep going. One photograph matters more than the others. M11. Arthur never saw the complete version. I did. Andrew opened M11. A hotel corridor. Poor lighting. A service door. Nothing immediately remarkable. Then he opened another file beside it. M11_FULL. The uncropped image widened. Lucy felt her stomach drop. At the far edge stood Amelia, alive, watching Edward Bell enter a room. Behind Belle stood Martin Vale, and inside the doorway, Robert K., 3 men, together. No ambiguity now, no separate coincidences, no indirect connections. They were meeting. Helen whispered, "My God." Henry sat down heavily. Lucy looked towards the date, 4 months before Amelia's death. Arthur had been right. The conspiracy was real. But that was not what killed Elliot. There had to be more. "Scroll," Andrew did. Another image. A wider frame. Someone had taken it from farther along the corridor. The photographer was visible in a mirror. Sarah Mercer, holding the camera. So Sarah had taken the photographs. She had documented Belle, Vale, and Kay. She had been helping Amelia. Lucy felt the pieces align. Sarah had disappeared because she knew too much. Perhaps she had survived by vanishing. Perhaps Arthur had spent years trying to find her. Then the next file appeared, M11_back. A scan of handwriting on the reverse side. Sarah's handwriting, perhaps, only one sentence. "He isn't the fourth. She is." The room became absolutely silent. Marcus stared. "She?" Lucy looked around. Arthur's entire investigation had been built around 3 men and one hidden fourth person. They had assumed the fourth was a man because Amelia had spoken of men. But Sarah's note contradicted that. A woman. The fourth person was a woman. Evelyn looked frightened. "Who?" Andrew scrolled. Another file. A contact sheet. Dozens of faces from Marrow events. Women, staff, volunteers, donors. One face had been circled. Lucy leaned closer. She did not recognize her. Neither did Marcus. Henry stared for several seconds, then stood. "No." Lucy turned. "You know her." Henry's face had become gray again. "Yes. Who is she?" He swallowed. "Clara Vale." Andrew frowned. "Vale? Martin's wife." Lucy stared. "You said he was divorced." "He was." "When?" "Shortly before Amelia died." Oliver's voice sharpened. "Where is Clara now?" Henry shook his head. "I don't know." "Alive?" "I believe so." "Profession?" Henry closed his eyes. "Psychologist." Helen looked towards him. "For Marrow?" "Yes." The room changed again. Clara Vale. A woman connected to Martin. Connected to Marrow. Invisible in the obvious chain because everyone had been watching the 3 men. Lucy looked towards the circled face. Did Amelia know her? Henry answered quietly. "Very well." That was enough to alter everything. "How well?" "Clara ran support sessions at St. Matthew's." Lucy stared. "Sarah's program?" "Yes." "And Amelia?" Henry nodded. "Amelia attended some of them. Not as a journalist, not merely as an observer. She had been inside the program, close to Clara, perhaps trusting her." Lucy thought of the books, the flowers. Someone Amelia trusted enough to lend books to. The fourth person, a woman nobody noticed because she never appeared to be part of anything criminal. "Was Clara the person in the cafe photograph?" Lucy asked. Evelyn leaned closer to the old image. Long fingers, bent little finger, dark hair. The outline matched. "Yes," she whispered. Lucy felt dread rise. The fourth person had finally acquired a name. Clara Vale. And if Sarah Mercer truly remained alive, there might still be one person capable of explaining exactly what Clara had done. Then the house lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Someone screamed. A door slammed somewhere in the corridor. Oliver's voice cut through the blackness. "Nobody move!" Lucy heard breathing. Too many people, too close. Then footsteps, running, not away, towards them. Oliver shouted, "Stay where you are!" A body struck Lucy's shoulder. She stumbled against the bed. Something fell. Glass shattered. Then the emergency lights flickered on. Dim red illumination filled Elliot's room. Lucy counted instinctively. Oliver, Henry, Marcus, Helen, Andrew, Evelyn, Neil, herself, 8. Everyone. Then who had been running? Oliver seemed to reach the same conclusion. He moved into the corridor, empty. The footsteps continued somewhere below, fast, descending through the servants' staircase. "Someone else is in the house," Andrew whispered. Oliver pulled the study key from his pocket. No one separates. They moved together toward the staircase. At the landing, Lucy looked down. The entrance hall glowed red beneath the emergency lights. Amelia's portrait appeared almost black against the wall. The front door stood open. Rain blew inside. Oliver ran downstairs. The others followed. Outside, the gravel path shone under the storm. A figure moved near the trees. Human. Real. Lucy saw them clearly enough this time. A woman. Dark coat, running towards the cliff path. "Stop!" Oliver chased her. Lucy followed. Rain struck her face. The woman glanced back once. Only once. Her features remained indistinct in the darkness. But she was real. Not a reflection. Not a damaged photograph. Not a 10-year-old memory. She reached the path towards the old chapel, then disappeared among the trees. Oliver stopped Lucy before she followed. "No. She's getting away. We don't know if she's armed." Thunder rolled above them. Lucy stared towards the darkness where the woman had vanished. Then something white lay against the wet gravel near her feet. An envelope, dropped while running. Oliver lifted it carefully. A single word had been written across the front. "Lucy." Her blood ran cold. Oliver looked towards her. "That was meant for you." Inside was one sheet of paper, 3 handwritten sentences. Lucy read them beneath the weak light spilling from Ravensmere House. Arthur trusted the wrong person. Elliot found the right photograph. If you want to know who killed them, stop looking at the dead and start looking at who benefits from every version of the truth. No signature. Lucy read it again. Then a 4th line became visible beneath the fold. "And do not trust the police.